So we're getting started with how to negotiate a deal. So this is Chris Craddock. Chris Craddock is the owner of Redux Realty and runs a residential real estate team, but has also been a longtime investor. Got started kind of more on the investing side, and like my business partner Rob Chavez, kind of backed into the actual sales, residential sales side of it, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Yep. And so I've asked Chris to kind of come in and talk about tonight's topic, which is how to negotiate the deal, identifying qualified, motivated sellers. We've got a bunch of slides. We might not go through all of the slides that we normally kind of go through because I think it'd just be a little more interesting with Chris's track record and experience and insight to kind of get him to share a lot. And I'm gonna hopefully ask some questions. And we were already, just before we went live, having a pretty effective question and answer period. I'm getting rid of this hot thing. Question and answer period with Daniel Nice in the back of the room throwing out some interesting probing questions. So we'll probably pick that conversation back up now that we're officially started. And it's a little bit late tonight, so thank you guys for being here on time. I'm wondering if there's a little bit of a summer slowdown, but people should be kind of rolling in. So as they roll in, we'll just let them kind of introduce themselves either at the end or whatever it might be. But Chris, would you expound a little bit on when did you get started in real estate investing? Give me just a little bit about your background.
Yeah, and actually I'm trying to share this whole live thing. How do you share the live? Help me out.
You do that and I'll do this.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I started in 2003. I was on staff with an organization called Young Life, and my wife got pregnant. I was making about $25,000 a year, which, that's kind of hard to live on $25,000 a year, and we just had a goal that she would stay home. And so I just, I went to the library, Chantilly Regional Library, which was right across from our townhouse, and checked out every book on investing they had. And one of the people just said something about reading, boom, awesome. Just knocking on doors of people in distress, people in foreclosure, all the other stuff. So I just went and started knocking on doors, and I still remember the funniest one. The first guy that said yes, it was on Golden Oak Drive in Centerville. It was this little condo, and the guy, I knocked on the door, and I'm like, hey, I saw your house is going to auction in a couple weeks. I'd like to buy it. And he looks back, and I saw his girlfriend or whoever it was sitting on the couch, and like it was through this like screen door, and he's like looks back, closes the big door behind him, and he was like, hey, can I give you my phone number? Can you call me in 4 hours? Because I'll talk to you then. And I was like, okay, sure. So he gave me his phone number, which, and I called him, and sure enough, we got the deal. And then here's the crazy thing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a contract. I didn't know how to sign a contract. I wasn't an agent. So that was like, I called a buddy of mine who was a realtor and was like, John, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you make sure this is actually a deal because it's before Zillow or anything like that? And also, do you mind like writing up the contract? And then we can just split the deal. And so I JV'd on the first deal. And then here's the crazy thing was I just kept doing that. And then I found another deal. And actually that deal, I'll share it real quick, but it was actually right here on Linton Hall Road, a townhouse over here. And on Golders Green Drive, which I don't know why I remember
Golders Green. We just had Leon Pierce. We just sold a Golders Green property. Yeah.
It's crazy. Like I mean, that was literally 2003. I still remember these street names, but I'll never forget. I was sitting there at the table. I was walking around, and there's this husband who was staring at the ground the whole time. And I was talking to the wife, and she was like, "Okay, so here's what the bank said is what we owe. How much could we sell for and not make any money?" And I was like, did I hear you right? And I was like, well, I guess you could sell for this plus closing costs, so maybe like, $3,500 more. And she's like, okay, I'll do that because I want to F him. And I was like, and he was like literally just sitting there staring at the ground the whole time. And I was like, somebody screwed up. Somebody did something stupid.
That was like your second deal?
That was the second deal. And so, and so literally, we did the first deal, which we hadn't closed yet, but I didn't have enough money for it. It was before '08, so like I could close a commercial loan with 5% down, which I borrowed and like figured out how to get 5% of like, whatever it was, $130,000 for the condo. And, or actually no, it was like 95 and I sold it for 138. But we literally did a wholesale on that deal, which I didn't know what a wholesale was. And I still didn't know what it was until a couple of years, like 5 years, 10 years ago, whatever it was. But we literally, instead of flipping it, we just cleaned it out and put paint on there and replaced the carpet and then just put it back up on the market instead of flipping it, and made, I think we made something like 25 grand, that we split, and then we moved it right into this deal on Golders Green, and then we flipped that one and then did another one, and then the crazy thing was,
and at this time you're making 25K ish.
Yeah.
Full time, like you're destitute.
It's my full-time job. Yeah, it was nutty. And so I ended up turning into another deal, and like in the 3 deal or the handful, we did a couple more, and essentially in about 4 months I made like $250,000, which was my split. Like we made $500,000 and I kept $250,000. And so for me, I was doing ministry, and I love ministry, and so I was just like, okay, I'm good. So we kept doing ministry, and then I stopped doing the flipping, stopped doing all the other stuff, and then I've got 6 kids, and so kept having more kids, and the money just started disappearing. And then I started picking up just like side things to like have enough money because the money was going away. And then like 2010, I was trying to sell my blood to NIH for $300 to buy Christmas presents for my family, and I was like, okay, that's it. And so then I got back into flipping, but at that point, everything was a short sale. Actually, that's where I met Ben. Ben and this other guy that I talked to, like, did some negotiating for our short sales. But the crazy thing, I was getting all these short sales, and a buddy of mine, I just called him and was like, hey, can you write these up? I'll give you we'll split the buy side commission on it. And so like, he was like, yeah, sure, but is this gonna be, and like we had like 11 of them under contract in the first like week. And so, and the market's changed since then, but that was kind of the start of that. So I started doing more flipping, and then other things changed, and then started the real estate business in 2014, and then, yeah, that's it. So I did a lot of talking, but that's...
No. So as you can tell, there's a wealth of knowledge in terms of the specifics on how to make these things happen, and I'm going to make you expound a lot more on a lot of that stuff. Come on in, grab a seat. Let's do this, though, a couple of real quick initial slides, and then we'll get back to some important strategies to kind of make sure that if you get a phone call tomorrow from a motivated seller, that you know how to handle that phone call, you know how to talk the language, how to solve the problem, and so on. We'll kind of get into that. But what is Grid? Grid is a global real estate community built for investors by investors. We're not gurus. We're a group of real people doing deals. Our mission is to kind of connect, collaborate with like-minded people, build wealth, encourage people to like get started in doing some real estate investing. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of the wealth in people's individual, net worth portfolios, etc. I'm gonna be curious if you know like what percentage of your net worth is in real estate versus other things, but to kind of have real estate be a vehicle to kind of really generate wealth and do it together. Like the powers in the network, have other people, the people that you meet in this room will help you connect the dots and things that you need, and you'll be able to connect the dots for other people as well. We are not for a specific level of investor experience, from brand new people who don't own a single home and are just hoping to maybe buy their first property, to seasoned investors like yourself, Chris, who have gotten a lot of track record and a lot of experience in doing that. This is kind of a little bit of the Grid's growth process. We'll do some quick intros because you did such a great intro. I'll do mine real quick. So my name is Matt Magel. I am the owner operator with my lovely wife and business partner Beth here of CAZA Gainesville. CAZA Gainesville is one of 5 offices under like the CAZA platform. CAZA was founded in 2008-ish. 2008 or so by my business partner Rob Chavez. We had one office in Reston. We've kind of spread out and opened up multiple different offices under different ownership arrangements. One of which is the Gainesville business. Why I run this group is because I have got a primary focus of really investing in the Gainesville community, and I don't mean real estate investing. I mean just investing in people in the community. Serving, giving. Come on in, grab a seat. Thanks for coming. You're good. For serving the community, loving on the community, giving the community as my primary active income is as a real estate sales team owner. like Chris was kind of talking about the Redux group, and hopefully we'll share more about that as well. And I run it to kind of have the exposure so people kind of know that, hey, I'm the Gainesville guy. What do we want to accomplish with you? Get in relationship with you, network, look for opportunities. If you guys have opportunities and you're looking for, I am the self-proclaimed guy who's got a guy. So if you need a car repair guy, a plumber, electrician, or whatever, I got it. So let me know if I can ever be of any assistance in that way. And then the easiest way to probably connect with me is certainly get my business card before we leave. But Facebook.com/Matt Magel. I stay up with everybody on Facebook pretty consistently as well. It's an easy way for me to kind of, get people to connect with me. Anything else that you would add, Chris, for yourself? Why are you even willing to come and help me out tonight? Or how can people connect with you best? Or
Yeah, sure. I mean, here's one of my stories. You talked about his business partner, Rob, and it was funny when I first started in real estate at Keller Williams. I'd go post up in Rob's office because he was one of the top agents in the office, and just grill him and ask questions all the time. And heck, I just like a lot of my buddies give me a hard time because I'm always just grilling people and just asking questions over and over again. And it was pretty awesome because Rob, was just really helpful. And then I started listening to other people. Anybody I would go listen to at a seminar or on a podcast, I just reach out and grill them, and people were so generous with me. So I just always decided that, anytime somebody asked me to share, if it's possible, I want to help other people, because I would never be where I was if it weren't for people like Rob and others. They were super generous with their time.
Well, I appreciate you coming and sharing tonight, bud. We're going to do everybody else in the room now, so get prepared. We want to know some simple things, right? You can kind of share as much or as little as you want, but we'll try and keep it to under 15 minutes a person. Just kidding. But are you currently an investor? What kind of properties are you interested in? What kinds of real estate vertical, real estate investing vertical, whether it be short-term, mid-term, long-term, flipping, wholesaling, whatever it might be. What are you hoping to learn, not just tonight, but specifically tonight if you want to ask, because obviously we can make sure that we cover that. But just in general, also in like your wealth journey, your real estate investing journey, like what do you want to learn, and how do you hope to benefit from the group? Any volunteers, or should we be voluntold? Perfect. Hey, what's up? Right in the front.
So what's up, everybody? My name is Brandon.
Brandon.
I'm looking to get into investing. I'm licensed in Virginia, but I really don't have the capital like that. So yet. Very important, yet. And then, I'm just looking for a bunch of like rehab projects, anything I can learn about investing. Hopefully there's some investors in here I can learn something from,
For sure.
Something like that. And then, that's about it, man.
What kind of investing you're most interested in, or are you still even just figuring that out?
Like fix and flips.
Flips,
Like
okay.
my first actual deal was like a wholesale.
Okay.
And so that's basically what I'm trying to do, like just trying to learn as much
Wholesale,
about
fix and flip.
Yeah, fix and flip.
Active kind of income right now in terms of, instead of like buying rental properties and letting them sit.
Yeah,
for 40
I'm not
years.
at that level yet. I'm
Yeah.
definitely gonna get
That's
there
the plan.
eventually, but
Okay.
I'm not at that level yet. But
Cool. Well, who are you with brokerage wise?
I'm
your
with Major
active-
Key, but we're under Samson.
Samson,
So
okay,
like
cool.
the team I'm on is Major Key, but
Major.
basically,
Gotcha. Cool.
yeah.
Well, welcome. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you, brother.
I'm Erin Edwards, and by day I'm a finance person for a private school. I'm recently an empty nester, so I've been a little bored last year. And my husband and I are very interested in real estate, and so I'm super green. I would love to try starting some wholesaling and fix and flips.
Cool.
I am really interested in smaller properties, 2-3 bedrooms, something maybe young kids, young mid-20s are just starting out and maybe can buy their first home. First responders, military, anybody like that. So I'm here to learn. I don't really know a lot yet.
How did you find out about us? Just on meetup.com or? Good. Your name is really familiar. What private school?
I was at Highland in Warrenton for 13 years, and now
Okay.
I'm at St. James Episcopal School in Warrenton.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe just a common name. I don't know.
Who knows?
Next row.
My name's Ben Benita. I've known Chris forever. I met Rob, probably 2005 or 6 at before there were even meetups. I think it's before YouTube. Up in Tyson's. Flipped a ton of houses. Ended up in bankruptcy when the market turned before. So when I first got into short sales back in 06 and 07. Flipped probably 40, 50 houses around here. Made a ton of money. Got wiped out. So lesson learned. Got into apartments in 2016. And never looked back. It just, I learned about cash flow, and it's literally the exact same process to find and flip an apartment as it is to find a house, except the checks are a whole lot bigger with apartments, so let's go this way instead. So, I'm looking for apartments anywhere from 10 units on up, or any business now we've looked at too with real estate. We almost closed on the gas station, the Shell station between Gainesville and Warrenton. The seller changes his mind last minute. We're actually under contract on 3 apartments now, 2 in Winchester, 1 in Lancaster, and also on a marina out in King George with great income. There's a beach and tiki bar. It's just, we're gonna have a good party there. So.
I'm hearing,
If the party's happening, I'm in.
It's been awesome. It's right on the Potomac. It's really cool. And I was in Young Life, like in high school too. It's a really good group.
I'm hearing 10 or more units, businesses, cash flowing businesses, Lancaster, PA, and 2 in Winchester were the apartments. Is that right?
Yeah, there's my business partner from another meetup. He's from Lancaster, Ohio.
Lancaster, Ohio. Okay.
Yeah, he found this one. I'd never done an apartment before. We're actually flying up there Thursday, flying back Friday to do a site visit. But great numbers, and the model for that, if you guys have heard of Burr, buy,
Yeah.
renovate, refinance. That's the plan always for the apartments. You buy them, fix them up, refinance to return everybody's money, and then let that thing put cash in your pocket until your kids, grandkids grow up. So that's what we pursue. I try to stay within 4-hour drive of the DC Beltway, just something we could drive to and from if we want to do a site visit. Again, the 2 in Winchester, great. The marina's great. The one in Ohio, I probably wouldn't look at, but my business partner, again, he's from there, has family there, and the numbers are just a great property.
Yeah. Just curious, how are you handling? I know there's a lot of my buddies that are in that, and they're just getting hammered now with the rates going up. Are you guys just running it based on current rates, or running like the refinance model? Is it current rates? Is it if the rates bump? Like, how are you running your cap and your?
If we allow, if you guys know what pro forma is, it's projected income. So when we buy the properties, we try to allow where we don't have a negative cash flow, even if the rates go up to 8 or 9%. So money right now is between 5.5% and 6.5% for mortgages. I always try to get seller financing too. The marina, we talked to seller into holding financing at 6% interest, which is great. And same thing, the Lancaster property, Ohio, same deal. We don't have to get a bank involved with that one either. So it's just great. Do you have any questions on apartments or anything?
But building the buffer in, so even if the rates go up,
Yeah.
you can maintain.
Yes, and maybe we try to allow for rates to go up at least 2% from what we're quoted, and then even if vacancy, there's a whole lot we could talk about here. But even if we lose 30% of our tenants, then the property is still cash flow as well too. So we have some kind of buffer in there if 30% of our tenants were to leave, or if rates pop up to 7-8%, we still cash flow. We keep cash reserves and stuff too. But yeah,
That's cool.
That's just great.
Young lady.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm your wife.
Hi, wife.
My name's Beth Nagel. We own and operate CAZA Gainesville here locally, so real estate agents by trade, and investors too. We have a few properties here that are long-term rentals, and then we just bought our first short-term rental down at Lake Anna, so we're super excited about that one.
That's a hot spot.
Just renovated that one, it's done, so like, we're trying to get it up and running, but we're like down there all the time just having fun.
We really should rent this. We really should stop just, hanging out on the lake kind of thing. Yeah.
But that's been fun. So, yeah, just looking to network with you all and meet you all, and hopefully we can do some deals together.
Yeah, I didn't do a very good job of kind of talking a little bit about like our, what we tend to invest in. We have 5 long-term rentals, all in Western Prince William County. One's in Bristow, the other 4 are in Gainesville. And then we have the short-term rental at Lake Anna, the waterfront property that's kind of like a second home / we're learning a little bit about the short-term rental game. And then our primary residence is also in the same neighborhood. We've got 4 houses, right? 4 houses? No, yeah, 4 houses in one neighborhood. So not too diversified geographically in that. Hopefully that doesn't hurt us down the road. But it's certainly nice when people would like drop off the rent checks at your mailbox on just, on a monthly basis. In the back.
Hey guys, my name is Dana Nice. I am also a part of CAZA Gainesville. I've known Matt for 3 years now.
Yeah, beginning of the pandemic.
So compared to before I knew Matt, after working with him, my income first doubled, then tripled the next year, then quadrupled the 4th year, 3rd year, fourth year, we'll see where I end up. Beating last year's numbers so far, so very grateful to be in your orbit. And that's mostly why I'm here tonight. I want to be in the right room with the right people and make friends.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate you coming.
I'm Tyler Bailey. I'm also part of CAZA Gainesville.
Apparently I pay all my people to come to my meetings.
Make sure you show up to me.
Not directly, but it does.
Yeah.
Same thing with, like Dan said, being here is just putting me in the pathway of success. When I'm here, I'm really just looking to be a sponge and learn as much as I can. If I can get 1% better at my business being here, then I think it's time well spent. So looking forward to meeting each and every one of you and hopefully doing a deal.
Dan didn't really mention it, but Dan is interested in like medium-term rentals. He's done a lot of research on that. He wants to buy another. He was hoping to buy a property before his baby came, which is going to be in the next just couple of weeks.
That's right.
But having not done that, it might be put a little bit towards the latter part of the year, maybe early next year, depending on that. Tyler, what would you like to buy? You bought your first house and you're here like, dude, I just bought one. Give me a break. But like,
Now, we live right across the street from the Spotsylvania hospital, so I'm doing a little bit of research on traveling nurse.
yeah, that's
stuff.
the
My
medium
wife's
term.
a nurse, so she's doing a little background stuff at her job too. But definitely a rental in the future.
Yeah, your house might be a great medium-term rental when you go just move into another primary residence kind of thing. So that's an interesting option.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a thing called Furnished Finder that has trouble.
Yes.
I have been in contact with them.
Yeah, I just learned about that honestly like a week and a half ago or so. I forget who it was that was telling me about it, but
Don't lie to the audience. I've been telling you.
you tell me about Furnished Finder for months. I need to listen better. I need to listen better. I mean, I know about medium-term rentals, but I didn't search the website out.
It's okay. I know where I am in the pecking order now.
Tyler, thanks for the no. Anyway, important legal stuff. Disclaimer: do your own due diligence. We're not giving specific financial legal advice, of course. People do deals and got some ideas, and of course, by being in the room, I'm probably going to take your picture and put it on my social media, or you might show up on the Facebook Live, whatever it might be. But don't sue us for coming in and getting on our photos. All right. So the topic today, Christopher, is motivated sellers, right? Honestly, if we can come across people whose problems we can solve, who want their problems to be solved, that's the easiest way to get into a deal that's worth being in, right? Without people having a need, without people having something you can solve, it tends to not be the most motivated of sellers, right? There's a lot of slides here, and I'm not going to go through all. What is it? Does it say at the bottom how many there are? What are the two biggest things that cause motivated sellers? Blah blah blah. Emotion, circumstances. You got to do all these things. All right, Chris, give me some real stories, and not just the stories. I love them because they're interesting, but like, what would be? Give me a story about a seller that you came in contact with, how you were able to maybe identify that they were motivated. And then just kind of walking them through the process of needs analysis, solution creating, selling it, or just explaining it, or whatever your approach is when kind of interfacing with it. Like, give us some examples, and I'll use that to maybe ask you some probing questions, if that's all right. And anybody else too. If you remember, this is kind of a conversation. I don't want to be the only one. If you're like, hey, Chris, double click on that a little bit. Just feel free to raise your hand, speak up.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, I'll give one that
Yeah.
we're almost officially done, locked up. So, essentially the property was, out west a little bit, and like in DMV area, western part of the DMV area. It came with the property, and then there were two lots as well with it. And property was destroyed, beat up. Seller owed just over $130,000 on it, wanted $150,000 for it. And, we looked at it, and she had like a 2.75% interest that she has had for 15 years. So we said, we just put it out there, hey, we'll take owner financing on this deal. If somebody's interested. We talked to the seller, she said, okay. Essentially an investor came to me and said, hey, look, we would love to, partner with you. And so we worked together on getting this deal sold. So, essentially what we did was the seller said, I needed $10,000. So the buyer came, we said he didn't have a lot of money. So we're like, look, she needs $10,000 plus closing costs. And he also could afford $1,100 a month, right? Her payments were just over $900 a month. So we said, all right, we will make nothing up front as investors, right? But you'll pay off the seller, you'll pay her $10,000. You will move the loan into your name, which is, you'll leave the loan in her name, but you will start paying the loan for her, which is just over $900. But he's willing to pay $1,100. So we're like, well, how do we get paid? So we decided we would get paid in two ways. One, for the next 15 years or whatever's left on the loan. There's 20 years left on the loan. So for the next 20 years, so she's had the loan for about 10 years, he'll pay almost $200 a month to my business partner and myself. So we'll just get paid that for the rest of the time. But also, we were going to move the one property over, but the two lots we're just going to keep. And so with the lots, again, this is just how I'm thinking about this. With the lots, we've got two options on it. One, just hold on to it and pay taxes forever. Or two, one of my good friends, Brent Bowers, loves land financing, and he has a coaching company called Land Sharks, and he loves to get a property and then sell it owner financed over a long period of time, so you're getting cash flow on land, and then let other people do whatever they want to do with it. And then if they default, you get the land back. If they don't default, they just pay you for however long you have. So I think that's what we're probably going to do with the land, is just put it out there, owner finance the land, and then just get cash flow from the land.
Curious, those lots, are they adjacent to one another, or are they kind of separated on either side of this property?
No, they're adjacent.
They're adjacent. That's cool. The land sharks guy, tell me a little bit more about how that system works. He sells it, but he's the bank for somebody that buys it now?
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, so he's the owner financing on those to somebody, and then those folks build on the lot? Anything?
Whatever people want to do with land. Some people want to hunt. Some people want to park a camper on it.
Gotcha.
Some
Okay.
people want to build. Whatever. Who really cares if they pay the money?
Yeah. It doesn't have to matter. Okay. Talk about this seller. How did you realize that she was motivated? How did go through the interactions with her and kind of saying, all right, I could tell that this was a real deal. There's all sorts of opportunity. There's all sorts of people that might, be doing some marketing and get a phone call, and call and you're like, this isn't a real thing. This isn't a motivator. This isn't somebody's going to take action. What were the tells with, say, this specific example that you knew this was a motivated seller want to do something?
Yeah. So what happened on this one was friends of mine that were reaching out to two people that were likely to sell, whatever the reason was for this particular person. They started talking with her. They usually give me a call when they're close to locking stuff up. And the deal was, she wants to get out of this property because she's had it forever. It's a total disaster, total disaster, almost like a hoarder house. It's starting to just, not be kept, well, it's definitely not kept up at all. And so she's just like, this is painful. And what I always say is, when you're negotiating a deal, if you think of yourself like a doctor, right? Like the doctor goes in, I've had 3 shoulder surgeries over here and 1 on this one, right? And so I went into the doctor last year because my shoulder was starting to bug me again. And he does something called the crank test, and cranked it a little bit, and I was like, jeez. And then he did it again. And but then he was like, yeah, your labrum's, a little jacked again. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought. Probably should have been a ribbon dancer instead of wrestling, playing rugby or whatever, but then he told me what we were going to do to solve the problem. And he caused a little bit of pain, pushed on it, reminding me of the pain, and then gave me a prescription and said, hey, this is how we're going to solve it. And I was all in because I wanted my pain solved. And so the same thing with the seller is like, she, what we train everybody to do that we partner with is like, hey, how do you, what is your pain? And then how can I solve your pain? Because this is the thing. Everybody on my real estate team will say, I literally almost every time I teach, I always say the same thing. The people that make the most money are the people that solve the most problems, right? That's just it. And if you believe that, and if that's your value proposition in life, is if I want to make more money, I need to solve more problems, right? And then the bigger the problem you solve for people, the more money you make, right? Like if your problem is I need a ditch filled in, that's not as big of a problem, so you make less money filling in ditches, right? If you want to say, hey, I've got a house that's my biggest asset that I need to figure out a way to get rid of in a way that is as is, that just is, I'm done with it, that's a bigger problem, and you have the opportunity to make bigger money. So that's that whole idea is, the bigger the problem, the bigger the money you can make.
Can you think of an example where, and I'm sure there's maybe a bunch of them and they might not be super memorable, so I apologize if this is a hard thing to really think of a specific example, but like where you came across a not so motivated seller and they're not saying the things on the phone and you're like, hey man, I whether you couldn't find their pain or like, what does it sound like when you're like, I'm probably not going to be able to help you, or what are some of the things that you are tells or red flags that you're wasting your time potentially?
Well, there's two versions of that. The first version I would say is somebody that still wants to sell, but they don't want to sell at a massive discount. They're just not done, right? And so those are people that still want to sell, and as a real estate agent, that's great because I list those properties. The people that like are just like, whatever, hey, I know I've got something worth $400,000. If you pay me $500, I'll sell. Those are the people that you're just like, all right, well, great, yeah. And you just don't want to waste your time. But if they're asking the right questions, if they do, and these are the questions, like, how much are you giving me for it? How soon and it's kind of these things. Do you have a vision for why you want to move? Do you have a reason why you want to move? And, if they do have a reason, and there's a reason that they are kind of considering staying in place, are those solvable problems? Like, hey, the interest rate's too high. Hey, I can't get a payment that I'm looking for. Hey, I don't want to fix up my property before I sell. Hey, it's too much of a hassle to figure out how to get this sold because I live in Connecticut. Those are problems that can be solved. So you ask those questions, are these solvable problems, or is it, hey, my kids are in school until next year and I just don't want to move out of the area until my kids graduate? That's a hard one to solve. So that's kind of the question. Are they solvable problems in the near term?
Some of the one of the slides here that I thought was kind of cool and talking about like determining motivation, like things that you can kind of be asking people, whatever it is. How did you hear about us, right? Whether it's from a marketing piece or did they get told that you were the problem solver, right? Like Ben, I imagine that, at least in buying apartment complexes, like, hey, how did you hear about us, right? Most likely that's going to be somewhat revealing as to what maybe their pain is, because they'll come through a different channel. Obviously, is the house on the market? Have you had any offers? Why are you selling? That's one of the things that I've seen people kind of do is create a lot of rapport with people to see if there is a enough relational equity to kind of do it, and then say almost like in a negative selling standpoint. This might even be on another slide here, but like why would you need me to help you sell this property? You know what I mean? Like, and let them kind of show their cards a little bit about like well, the reason why is because, and I am just taking notes down, that tells me so much about like why would you want me to potentially solve this problem? When was the house, what are all the costs of the renovations? What are the things that have been renovated in the house? And some of these questions are a little bit more into the line of like kind of stacking the deck and be like, look, your roof is a little bit old. So you said your roof is really old. Your kitchen was never renovated, right? So that you can kind of help them understand that the house is worth $400,000. They want to sell for $500,000 is not really going to be much of an option. What else needs to be fixed is the mortgage current. A lot of this stuff, obviously, you need to, as an investor, have a pretty clear idea of exactly what's going to end up being found by the title company, God forbid, when you get to that steps. So, what can uncovering some of those things, and that'll oftentimes lead to motivation. Yeah, I'm 6 months behind on this. Rob's been buying a couple of properties out in like the Front Royal area. I'm sure you're probably aware of that, and a lot of them have been people that need their finances. They're behind on their stuff, and and he's doing subject twos to just kind of get them out of mortgages that have gotten out of control. So that's an easy way to maybe potentially find what is the motivation. How much do you own the house? Do you know? One of the, is this here, file with most people in mind? No. Oh yeah, sorry. One of the ways is to get, one of the important things, and Chris, I'd like to ask you a question on this. How important is it in your mind to have the seller give you a number first, or how much are you interested / willing in providing a number first? Do you have a way, or case
It's one of the
by
most
case?
important pieces of the whole deal. Like,
So tell me about that.
I mean, if you never read the book, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, it's one of the best negotiating books out there. He calls it anchoring. The person that gives the number is the one that gives the anchor. And so, and listen, as a real estate agent, I always say to my agents, I'm like, hey, if you go on a listing presentation and you don't know the number the seller wants, just don't even go on it, because you're planning to lose. Like that's the whole thing. Like straight up, like that is how important it is to me, that you need to know what they want. And now, you ask how much you want for it. Some people will tell you the number, but most people will say, well, that's why I'm talking to you. I don't know, and so you've got to have a good script for that. And I'll just give you my script. This is the script. So first you say how much you want for it. If they say what they want, that's great. If they don't tell you what they want, you just say, hey, so how much are other properties in the neighborhood selling for? Okay, is yours better or worse than that property? Is yours bigger or smaller than that property? Does yours have more updates or less updates than that property? And then you just go through and you just keep asking those questions. And so you said that yours is a little bit smaller. So what do you think the price difference is? Okay, you said that yours needs a total facelift. How much does that facelift cost, do you think, if you were to do the whole house? And they'll usually always be light, right? Like maybe it's $100,000, but they'll say like 50. But regardless, you just say, okay, so it's smaller, and it's probably the difference is X dollars. This is there, so probably X dollars. And you're saying they're selling, let's just stay with the 400 number. You're saying they're selling for 400, and it needs about $100,000, or it's about $50,000 for the difference in size and $50,000 for that. So are you saying that you're looking for around 300? Is that kind of the number you're talking about? And then they'll say, yeah. Then you got their number, right? And then you go in, and that number is in the ground, and then you've got to decide, can I, does this number move, or is that a strong number? And then do your numbers make sense at 300?
And so that you're getting them to kind of, you're doing some math for them, but they're kind of confirming a number that, based on the math, is the way that it's been easiest to kind of get
Absolutely.
that anchor in the ground.
Yeah, and if they tell you worst case scenario, if they tell you they don't know what any of the properties in the neighborhood sell for, the last thing that I always like to do, I say, so, listen, Zillow's estimates are usually Zesta wrong, which is why they lost $1 billion over the, and then had to fire 25% of their staff. But Zillow says this number for completely fixed up houses in the neighborhood, and oftentimes it's way off. Do you think that if your house was completely fixed up, this is about right? Okay, and everybody's house needs a lot of work, like if they're distressed, right? So how much do you think it would cost? And then they'll tell you the number, and then when you say, okay, and you don't negotiate with them on the phone there, now you've got their number, then you go in and the question is, okay, so it costs $100,000 to do everything. How much would it be worth for you to not have to do this work yourself, whatever. And I'll tell you, here's one of my favorite stories. I was in the Brookfield neighborhood right next to Chantilly High School, and I was meeting with a guy, and he had, his house was a disaster. It needed so much work, and he was just telling me how he was going to be doing all the work from his house that he now has in Front Royal. He was going to come back because they moved out, and he was going to come back and do this, whatever. He's like, I can knock it out in 6 weeks, and I'm like, you can't knock this out in 6 years. And so finally, and he kept telling me he wanted like 600 for it when it was all said and done. And I was like, okay, so let me ask this question. And I just based on everything he said, I was like, there's no way he's going to give me a number that makes any sense. And he was right. 600 ARV is right. And I was like, if you had to do nothing, like you literally could just come with a pickup truck, pick up whatever you want, and leave everything else, and just be done. And in 2 weeks, you get the cash for this house. What's the number that you would want right now? And he literally, and this after we talked for like 2 hours, and I finally asked the right question. And I was expecting a crazy number, like 500, 550, something like that. And he was like, at 350, I would just walk away right now. And I was like,
Same
yeah, well, I was
Yeah.
like, be cool.
Let
You know,
me check with
but on
my
the
accountant.
On the inside, I'm like, yeah, but be cool. And so, so I was like, let me look, and I took my time and whatever, and it was like, okay, I think we can knock that out. I think we can do that. And so he was good, and boom, signed right there.
And how much did that house require in renovations? 100-ish K?
He was probably about 75.
75? All right, good. With your connections and so on and so forth, be
Yeah.
able to get it done a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
Anybody have a question before we kind of move maybe to another slide? Dan, you had some questions before that were super detailed, but is there any questions that you guys might have before we move on?
I don't want to hijack it too soon.
Well,
No.
I'll keep you
I
in
got a
check.
question.
Yes, you may.
So when we were looking for properties at Lake Anna, we came across the issue of Matt was knocking on doors, talking to people, and for whatever reason, if there's not an agent on the other side, and you are an agent, and you're talking to a person who needs to sell, wants to sell, is thinking about selling, whatever, it's hard to get them to like buy into your number, what you say it's worth or what you're willing to pay or whatever. It's like almost this, you're on opposite sides, right? They're the seller, you're the buyer and the agent, so it's tricky.
Yeah.
How do
Almost
you-
makes them, we found that it almost, now granted, I probably wasn't doing the right thing in terms of, I was maybe bringing my number, which made them feel to like, shouldn't I get a second opinion about what my house is really worth? And these were not super distressed houses. Some of them, no, they were not
No,
super
they
distressed
weren't
houses. They could use a little bit of work, so there wasn't certainly that, solve my problem. But,
But I just wondered, like, do you run into that in your scenarios as well? Cause you're wanting to obviously purchase them, or you have a team.
Yeah, so, yeah, and actually one of the other pieces for negotiating is I always say, and listen, if you're listed on the market, you're gonna pay 6%, so let's just knock that off because you pay it anyway, so we'll just get rid of that. So that's another piece on that, which I forgot on that piece. But one of the things that I always try to think of myself, even in this situation when I'm negotiating, is that I'm an educator, and so if I think about educators, they always say that somebody retains 10% of what they're told and 90% of what they learn on their own, right? You're a school person, so that's that whole idea, is get them to come to give them the tools they need to come to the conclusion that you're seeing. But I'll tell you, if they see you as somebody trying to buy their house and you're dropping numbers in front of them, at that point you're pushing, right? And literally every single person, pretend like I am pushing. Put your hands up and pretend that I'm pushing against you. What do you immediately do? You push back, right? And so that's that whole idea of the second you get into that, you lock horns and you're done. And that comes up with a book. There's a book that every salesperson needs to read. Actually, he wrote 2 books. If you've not read these 2 books, I promise you have to read them. It's called Pitch Anything and Flip the Script. Those 2 by Orrin Clapp. And they're incredible. And he talks about this power frame. And it's not completely this, but I've kind of adapted this on this idea. The second somebody draws a line in the sand and is arguing their position, you're toast. You're done. And so that's the idea of like when I'm in any sort of a negotiation and I feel like I have locked horns with somebody and they've drawn their line in the sand, I always stop and I'm like, oh, that's a cool clock. Where'd that come from? And just change the subject, right? Get out of that pushing match and just start, just change the subject, and then you can come back to the conversation. But if you're giving your numbers, I don't know that you're ever going to win on that. You've got to get them to see the numbers. So, what are they selling for? Okay, if it needs this much work, if you got rid of how much would you pay for an agent? How, asking the questions. I just finished reading John Maxwell's book, Great Leader, or Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, or Great Leaders Ask Good Questions, whatever it is, something like that. But that's that whole idea of, you ask the questions to get them to talk, and then you inform their questions. So what do you think about this? And then,
yeah.
Say something too,
Yeah.
you took them down the path just right. There's Brian Tracy's a good salesman. He has a lot of good content. he's kind of like a creepy old guy. His content's fantastic, but he said something that always resonated with me. It says, telling is not selling, ask questions. Just like that sell me this pen thing. They don't talk about how great you are, how great the pen is. Ask them questions like you do with a motivated seller. What's your number? What do you think about this? If you go in, like you said, I think your house is worth this, and I think it needs this. I think that's when you run into more of the pushback. But you know, it's hard for them to argue against themselves if they're just giving you all the answers to those questions. What do you think this and you think that? But it sounds like you nailed it on that one. That's good.
Yeah. Good question. Did you have one, Dan?
You just had a contract on you?
What's that?
You had a contract on you that had all the right terms, or you had to have it printed out, or how did you actually get him when he was hot and ready to sign?
Oh, which one?
The one you just talked about where he said 350 and then you made it happen?
Oh, got it.
Oh yeah. No, I have my contract ready. Here's one of the things a mentor said to me is always be prepared to succeed. If you show up and you don't have your contract with you, if you're an agent, you don't have your agreements with you, if you have whatever, if you don't have this stuff with you, you haven't prepared to succeed. And so you've told your mind, I'm not going to win this, so of course you're not going to win it. You walked in like a loser and you're going to be a loser, right? If you want to be a winner, you got to walk in like a winner and just be prepared to win, right? And so that's that whole thing. And I think the way you show up will oftentimes dictate the way you end, right? Is like, do I show up as a winner or do I show up as somebody that's preparing to lose? And that's the whole idea. And I know these are hard words like on that, but like I think until I understood this and until like I had a person legitimately say this, like, Chris, if you don't prepare to succeed, you're preparing to be a loser. Like those are hard words to hear, but once you accept those words, then you can change and be better and then decide to be a winner. Yeah.
And so did you have like a lot of different addendums ready in case you're going to finance it in different ways? Or is it all just, it's all blank and you're going to fill it out when you need it?
Well, the good news is almost all of it's on my laptop, so I just turn on a hotspot and I just change it up as we're talking right
And you
there.
just email it to him and he just...
So we use .loop, and .loop has an in-person signing thing, so you can literally change it right there, and then
Turn the laptop around.
hit in-person signing, and then just you're walking through, boop, boop,
No,
boop.
you've got a touch
All you
screen.
gotta do is, no, it's a Mac, so it's just like,
Yeah,
they just,
Macs don't have touch screens.
Yeah, so
How does
does-
he do it?
It's just a laptop. You just
Yeah, you
click
just
the button
press
to
the
sign.
button.
Like DocuSign.
Gotcha.
Yeah, same thing.
Honor system.
No, I mean, like it goes to their email, but it's an in-person signing, and they can say, "This is your name, this is your signing. You agree? Yeah, click, agree, kind of thing."
yeah, once they sign it just gets emailed right to them, the executed document. So it's really cool.
A question real quick. What
Yeah,
was
yeah.
that website called?
The contract one.
Yeah.
.loop is one of them. DocuSign is another one, but .loop's a great one. We've used both of them. We're on DocuSign now because KW signed their contract with DocuSign, whatever it might be. But okay, I want to go back to any other questions real quick because I actually want to ask a question. You gonna say something, sweetie? Okay, because I want to kind of ask a question of both Ben and Chris, and it's your experience in the making. You talked about 4 months doing a bunch of these deals, putting $250,000 in, allowed you to kind of get back into doing what you were wanting to do, but that wasn't going to pay you very much, and kind of it had the coffers filled at least until it started to kind of run out. But then I know, because we were in, I think, Dallas, Texas, one late night at a KW conference, and we started talking about when things really went sideways at the downturn and you were holding a bunch of inventory and trying to like figure that whole thing out. So there was a big learning curve that happened there. You mentioned similarly, when the downturn of 2010, Ben kind of reorganizing, having to figure the whole thing out. Give us something that's a pre and the biggest difference between crash and post crash. How you did it then, what you learned, how you're doing it now. And this is not necessarily motivated sellers, but just like broad real estate investing, business practices. What did you learn through that you employ?
Well, the cool thing for me was, thankfully, mine happened when the market was still good. It was like in 2012, 13. So if I was holding in the crash and then it went down, it would have been like bankruptcy lights out, because I lost a lot of money when the market was still going up. So that was the whole deal. And actually, this was one of the most empowering things that I remember a mentor of mine said to me during the time that I was trying to figure it all out, right?
And figure out what? Just so people who don't know anything about sort of like figure out
So what happened was, in Jim Collins in his book, How the Mighty Fall, talks about the hubris born of success is one of those things. And so I flipped a bunch of short sales and did a bunch of deals where I made a lot of money. And I thought anything I touched would turn to gold. And so I then bought tons of stuff. And actually, most of them was good deals, but I bought way more than I could handle, and with some business partners. And we ended up having $10 million worth of properties, and we had about $150,000 spend a month just to keep the lights on. And all of a sudden, when I realized the next property probably wasn't going to be sold for 5 to 6 months, and we had $300,000 in the bank of what we've raised of the $10 million that we've spent out, and all of a sudden it was like, holy crap, this model is not working. It's getting worse and worse and worse. The money's going faster and faster. And so, then, we decided to get rid of stuff. And actually, we ended up selling stuff subject to people that so I held owner finance, which I always want to be on the other side of that. But on that point, I'm like, I literally don't have enough money to keep the lights on if I don't do something. And so I found people that I trusted and said, hey, you want to take this? I'll sell it at a discount and I'll hold financing. Just get it done and get it off my books. So, but at the end of it, I personally, my business partners owed money. I personally took on $660,000 worth of debt that, thank the Lord, that's actually where Redux was born, because I needed to pay off my debt. And
Redux is his residential real estate sales team. That's one of the best in all of Virginia, of course.
Yeah, thank you. So so it took me 2 years. Like, I grinded like crazy, but because of necessity, I just worked my butt off. In 2 years, I paid off the $660,000, which also made the team grow really fast because necessity, right? And so so that happened there. But also during it, one of my mentors said this to me, like, Chris, you're gonna be so much stronger on the backside of this. And he's like, so many people want to say, hey, I've become something, but he said, never trust somebody that doesn't walk with a limp. And I was like, that is a powerful, powerful statement. And so we got through it, and thank the Lord, it made me the man I am today. And so now I understand, and just because things are going well doesn't mean that I've got the Midas touch. Like it's just, you got to still look at everything and say, what is going well? How do you scale well? How do you spend money correctly? How do you not, just because a bet you made that you got lucky on worked out, doesn't mean that you should base your entire business plan on a 7-2 offsuit if you're a Texas Hold'em person. Like just because you won one hand doesn't mean that you're going to win over and over again. And so that was the real power of that, and it made me who I am today.
And so what I heard is, before, you weren't holding the deals accountable. It was just gonna work. And now, regardless if things are going well or things are not going well, you've got certain principles that you employ on a regular basis to make sure that every deal in and of itself is gonna be one worth investing in. Is that?
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And just scaling correctly, right? Making sure that you're not just throwing money at things. And when you start winning, it's easy to think you're always going to be winning, and that's how you set yourself up for a crash.
Yeah. Ben, same kind of question. You went through a crash, bankruptcy, blah blah blah. What's the difference between Ben 1.0 and 2.0, and how do you process stuff? What are you doing different?
Ben 1.0 did exactly like you said. I was killing it in 04 and 05 because the market was doing this. I felt invincible. No coaches, no mentors. I was just the man, because literally, like I said, every property we bought, as long as you could sit on it for 6 months, you made money. And my plan then, I've always wanted apartments, was to have a certain amount of money in the bank, a certain amount of money, to invest. Was well on track there, and we literally just got caught with the market. We always religiously had 6 months in reserves, and if you need 9 or 10 months, what happens to me? What happens is what happens to me. And ended up in bankruptcy, food stamps, had to sell my wife's wedding ring. That's a fun conversation to have. Actually, writing a book about all this.
Oh yeah.
But again, that was 05. I was in bankruptcy, and since then, I cannot recommend enough having a coach. I talk for 2 or 3 hours about there's a ton of people out there, you mentioned this earlier too, that will help you free of charge, that have been there, gone through bankruptcy, they know about apartments, they know about flips, they know about long-term, short-term rentals. Some people are schmucks, won't give you the time of day. Others, you buy them lunch, lunch, breakfast, dinner, give them a couple $100 to spend the day sitting in their office just listening to you make phone calls. I'm in probably 7 or 8 just fantastic multifamily groups. Hey, what do you guys know about the Roanoke market or the Atlanta market? Tons of people there. I mean,
Facebook email
groups.
lists, Facebook groups.
Yeah, there's again so much to talk about. But Facebook groups are great. But yeah, Ben 2.0. I have coaches, I have mentors, guys that own thousands of units more than me. They're well funded. They're a lot more tied into what the markets are doing. Constantly, hey, what do you think? I just heard rates are going up. I just heard this, just heard that. Yeah, and that's what we get when we make acquisitions. That's when we decide, hey, make sure you can afford at least a 30%, drop in occupancy. It may come in 6 months. We need to budget for what if the property goes 40% vacant. So, just more educated, more prepared, a lot more conservative now. The ego's been put in check. But yeah, and all that aside too, I learned a lot. The mental game is huge. The money and everything else aside, you got to be able to weather the storms. You may flip 10 houses, lose some money on one. And again, I know people that have quit, they lose money and they're like, this is stupid, I'm never gonna do this again. You're not gonna crush it on all of them. So you gotta have that mental wherewithal, and that's again where talking to Chris or somebody who's done this before, hey, don't sweat it. Let's go over what did you do wrong in that apartment? What did you do wrong on that flip? Let's learn, make sure you don't do it again. So yeah, that's me. The mentors, if things don't go right, everything aside, I get good in short sales, what do we do wrong here? What can we do to make sure we don't screw up again? So that's just the education and the coaches are big things.
I'm curious, you guys, I just, when you were sharing a little bit about your, that story, it made me just kind of think, like, we have a generation of people who are I'm 45, 46 next month. How old are you?
Turn 45 next month.
45.
No,
so-
actually, in like a week.
A week, okay, 45 in a week. And there's a lot of us, I know 2008, 9, 10, 11, 4 years, Beth and I, 2 college educated, hardworking, relatively intelligent people, for 4 years could not make more than $50,000 a year combined figuring stuff out. As an self-employed real estate agent, Beth, we had a little girl at home. Beth wasn't going back to the bank making.
I was cleaning Rob's roach houses to make Christmas money. Like,
But,
talking about your
and so-
anything, right?
They say that just because, like, you've shared some, our story, you talked about that, like, there's kind of a generation of, like, maybe 40 to 60-year-olds that went through the 2008. I'm wondering, like, what it kind of built in terms of thought process around money, how that's gonna kind of manifest in either a positive or negative sense, right? In 10, 20 years, people who kind of endured it and figured it out, people who came out stronger on the other end, like you mentioned, Chris.
Well, I mean, all these, like, the multifamily syndicators, there's some that are really good, but over the last 5 years, I've been talking, probably 3 years, I've been talking to all these people that are new, that have just gotten into it, and they were buying at 4 and 5 caps, which is a very low cap rate on, and I had lots of friends putting their whole life savings into it, and I remember talking to a couple of them on behalf of my friends, and they're buying at a 5 cap, and I'm like, but what happens if interest rates go up? What happens if the market changes? And they're like, it won't. And I'm like, how long have you been in this? And he's like, well, I retired, from my other job a year and a half ago. I was like, brother, this is a losing proposition. That whole idea, it won't. I'm like,
Yeah.
Anyway,
I've heard so many people talk about the market fundamentals over the last 2 years. We've all heard about it, at least those paying attention to the real estate space, or of course real estate agents. Well, no, the inventory is really low. You can't have all this stuff. I'm like, look, the reason why the market shifts hard this time is not the same reason that it shifted last time. Stop using the explanations of how it's so different from last time, because last time was a whole lot different than the time that it happened before. But you're right. You just have to always have the buffer. Figure out what the thing is. There's so much. Who would have expected in January of 2020 for rates to almost triple, but they didn't get that far. But like to go
I could
from,
have told you that was gonna happen.
you could have told that?
Yes.
I
I've been around the
would-
block
I mean,
a couple times.
Eventually, I would have said yes, but not at the speed with which it changed, right? Like the speed was what shocked me this time, right? We went from 2.675 in January of 2021, and we stayed in the low threes, high twos, low threes, all the way to basically January of 2022. But from January of 2022 to like September of 2023, no, I'm messing that up. All the way to January 2023. No, 2022. I'm sorry. January 2022 to September of 2022, for it to go up from that to 7 point whatever it peaked over there, like you can't. That's not what people were like saying. Well, the interest rates are going to go up 4% in the next 9 months. So yeah, you can never just kind of, but you got to be prepared for all those kinds of eventualities.
We were just in a big one.
Yeah.
The Wichita Falls, Texas, that happened to them. It's like 200 something, big property, 200 something units. Their monthly mortgage payment was $37K and change. It went to $53,000 a month, $16,000 a month up, and they're getting crushed. Like they're in trouble refinancing, but again, just didn't have the buffer they bought. They were getting bought at I think like just over 5 cap, and they're in a lot of trouble. And I think you're gonna see a lot more of that in like the commercial space. There was a big mall in San Francisco, I know, which was just given back to the bank. It's just you got to have the buffers, otherwise you get cooked.
Yeah, Bo Mankitti, who's one of those guys that owns 1,000 residential units, 400 plus commercial units. He's like, the only people that lose money in real estate are people who can't endure the shifts. Like if you just can endure the times when it's not going so well, then you'll always make money. It's only when you can't endure it, now you have to make the tough decision where you're going to lose money because you're trying to avoid, a collapse. Any other questions real quick before we're running close to end of time here. I'm a little bit over, but any other questions for you guys? So this is one of the things I referenced earlier, and just some simple little things when talking about like what is a motivated seller and what's not, right? Like a motivated seller will try and kind of sell you on their house, right? Like, hey, but look at all the good, you'll hear language around them talking about their property where they're trying to kind of convince you a little bit, right? So that's a tell. And then the try negative selling sounds like it's a really nice house. Why do you need help selling it, right? To get them to start revealing a little bit about what maybe they're not so interested in sharing. We're gonna stay on time. It's just a little after 8 o'clock. Chris has got a flight to St. Louis or something. Scottsdale, Arizona. Much better place to go. Just kidding. No, early tomorrow, whatever.
Well, I thought it was early. Turns out it's
later tomorrow.
in the afternoon.
Oh, good.
6 p.m.
You're like Rob when he travels. Rob was supposed to be in California at a conference, and he was like in Anaheim, and he flew into the wrong city. I'm like, dude, how do you flew into the wrong city? Got in a rental car and drove 4 hours to the right city. Anyway, that's Rob's traveling stories. Anyway, what did you learn today? Any other questions? Any other wrap up thoughts? Anybody? Anything you guys want to share or contribute? Yes.
We were talking before everyone got here about the 2% deal that you were working on with the seller finance. How did you arrive at the 2% number, right? So once did you work backwards from what the seller needed, and then how did you arrive there?
Yeah. So
real quick for the people that are listening online, give some context if you can with this just deal so that people can kind of. And then the question is, how did you get to the 2% for the seller financing when negotiating?
Yeah, there's this multi-unit deal that was brought to me, and the guy when just through asking questions, I found out he wanted some money up front, and he wants a bigger number at the end, right? And I'm like, you can have a big number at the end. I don't care. Like as long as the number in between and the number up front makes sense, right? And so I said to him, well, would you do a 10-year term? And he said, yeah, that's fine as long as the number up front is enough. And so I asked him what the number up front was, and at first they started with like $750,000, which to me was like way too big. I wanted to be like, the reality is like I wanted to be between 275 and 350, and we're almost there. We're actually finishing the negotiations now, but we're almost there. But I was just like, if we gave you a number that you liked at the end and a number up front that you liked, Again, I'm speaking in hypotheticals here. Would you be okay, and trying to just nail down each piece of it, right? Would you be okay with something like a 2% interest rate in between? And he said, yeah, I'd be totally fine with that. And I was like, so would you be okay with the 10-year term? Okay, well, I asked for 15 first. He said no, and then he said 10. Yes. I was like, okay. Well, then would you be okay with a 2% interest rate? And he said, yeah, I'd be fine with that. And so then I'm just nailing down
Is
piece by
that
piece by
amortized
piece.
over 30 or?
Yeah, so we're gonna do everything, amortized over 30 years with the 2% interest rate, balloon on 10 years. And so and again, I try to get them to give me an extension or extra time or like a chance to raise the interest rate and then have an extension, but he didn't want to do that. So I'm fine with that. Now we're just negotiating the down payment and we're negotiating the end number.
Gotcha. And then how are you planning on sourcing the down payment?
So, there's all these syndications, and I know it's like really expensive to do that. I've got a lot of friends with money that, hit me up all the time, and so about deals, but I don't know that they want to necessarily own single families or townhouses. And so I've literally I think what I'm going to do is just keep a third of the deal and just ask them to put in the down payment and then money for like operating expenses or whatever, and then I'll give them 2/3 of the deal, however they want to work it out, whether it's a third or whatever, and I'll keep a third of the deal to put it together. Yeah.
Nice.
Good.
How do you're just calculating all that in your head as you're talking to the seller, and you're like, these numbers will work at the end of the day, or are you kind of like doing it in stages?
Well, so yeah, I'm working it there on that piece, and then I'm also, after the conversation, it's definitely not a one conversation piece on this particular deal. On a lot of them, they are one conversation, but not on this particular deal. It's not. And so after I get off the phone, I'm looking at numbers. I'm saying, hey, does this work? Does this not work? What's the deal here? And then, the reality is, I've asked for their P&L. They sent me their P&L. Their P&L is definitely way off. Just the number of employees versus what their staff salary numbers are. Like, you see that a number that's off. And so I've asked for confirmation on that. But the reality is, I'm going to have a 60-day due diligence period where we'll go through their K-1 and their taxes and everything else. And, I'll still probably not get to the bottom of what it is, but if I can look at the numbers that it is now and the numbers that I can make it look like, then I can make a deal based on, it's got to work in today's numbers, but then if it can work in today's numbers, then I'm going to try to make it so that it'll be awesome in future numbers.
As you're underwriting these deals, do you have a second set of eyes, someone that you trust to look over them as well? And if so, what is that person?
Yeah, I've got a couple people that, just like Ben was talking about, I'll tell you, I literally just go find people all the time that that are excellent in their space, and I just ask them. So some of them are peers, and then some of them are people that I look up to. And my whole goal was to make the people that I look up to, to catch up to them and be peers, right? So here's an example, our friend Rob, right? I still remember, it's so funny because I literally would post up in his office and everything, and then the first, I think it was 3 months in a row, our team had higher numbers than and he called me. He's like, man, I used to let you sit in my office all the time, and now you guys have better numbers. He's like, I shouldn't have told y'all. Just joking around, right? Rob's the best, But that's that whole idea is you go hang out with people that are. Rob's literally one of my best friends, right? Somebody that's kind, generous, open, people that you want to be like or people that you are like that are doing more than you, and then you go hang out with them, and they're gonna force you to think like they think, and then you're gonna, catch up. And the funny thing was with Rob, I joked with him, the fact that I think it was that year, they did 225 deals that year that we caught up. And we were doing a little bit more, and he was joking about that, and I was like, dude, if you would have done 1,000 deals, I would have been able to catch up to that. Come on, man, let's go. But that's that whole idea is but if he did do 1,000 deals that year, I probably would have done close to 1,000 deals because I would have learned to think, at that next level. And so that's where I think just being around those people that force you to think at a different level, you will catch up to that.
When you, Dan's question about like how much you're doing on the fly, how much you're doing when you get in your car and doing the numbers. How many deals do you have to look at? How many things do you have to look at to even have kind of like a confidence level that you're not completely like way off? You know what I mean? Like it takes a certain amount of quote unquote practice to even just feel relatively confident that like, okay, I'm not shooting myself in the foot. Like what was the learning curve at the beginning where you're figuring it out?
So, I mean, here's the deal. On this deal right here, I'm going to tell you, and I hope it doesn't sound like pat on the back thing, because I was really thankful for this compliment. But I got the numbers. I was looking at it. I called a friend of mine, a guy named Chris Brigham. He was the CFO of the Ditmar companies. You drive through Arlington, you'll see Ditmar everywhere, right? And so I called Chris, and I was like, bro, I think I see stuff here. This is the real conversation. And I was like, I think I see stuff here, but I'm so terrified. Like the idea of sophomoric is to have enough knowledge that basically you hurt yourself, right? I'm like, I feel like I know enough to like hurt myself and get into a bad situation. Help me see what I'm not seeing. And his response to me, he's like, Chris, this is why you're as successful as you are and why you're going to continue to be successful, because you're coming to me with humility like this. That was his like direct quote to me. And I was like, okay, that was like a compliment that I'm so thankful for, right? And so that was the whole idea. But on that deal, I saw it, I read it, but then I went to somebody who I mean, just respect at just the utmost level. And again, I respect him because he's a man who knows his stuff, but he's also a man of integrity, which is who I want to be. And so like I called him and asked him, and then he's literally walking me through the questions I should ask, what I should see that I'm not seeing, all these different pieces on that. And he's also, as emotionally as I want to say yes to this deal, he just keeps reminding me, don't emotionally tie to it. If it's not this deal, you'll find the next one. So, yeah.
Any other questions before we kind of wrap it up?
I have a question.
Yes, Brandon.
So so basically my question is, so I be like cold calling a lot. Like me and my friend, we have this, I don't know if you guys know what call tools is. It's like the triple dialer, but you can add
Mojo and so on. Yeah.
We be calling off market properties, and right? And so my question is, how do you guys go about the comps? Like, let's say you're talking to a seller, and then you get the condition of the property and stuff, and you're like, all right, let me talk to my team, let me run some numbers, and I'll come back with you with an offer, right? And then let's say you how do you guys do your comps? Because like I feel like I have a pretty good understanding, but I feel like there's stuff I can learn about that. So that was my question.
I just do Zillow. I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say.
But hey, actually, the reality,
quick.
I know.
Yeah.
It's not. I did give it away too quick. I was like, this is being recorded. No. So
no. You do need to consider Zillow.
No. Because Zillow is a tool.
Right.
It has
So
its
this is what
place.
the buyers
I was
think.
you're
That's
like, damn, really that easy?
Somebody's gonna use that clip.
To me,
1000%. You definitely look at it.
yeah, no. Every one of my listing consultations that I do, when I go through the comps, I actually start with Zillow, Redfin, and Realtor.com, not to show them, not because it's accurate, but because I'm not trying to get off of that call and then them call me back in 45 minutes, be like, but I was just on Zillow and blah. I'm like, no, we already talked about that, right? We showed you what that is. But to your so it's a tool that I like using, but I use it in a slightly different way. I mean, I tend to stay as homogeneous as possible to the actual property. Meaning, like if we're looking at townhouses in a neighborhood, if I can find enough comps, meaning recently enough that are similar enough, I'll just really constrain the geographic area to very, very much like kind.
Right.
That's not always possible, right? If I'm looking in the last 6 months and in those townhouses in that neighborhood, there's only been 3 and they've got very different, I'm like, that's not gonna be good enough. So you gotta get a little bit creative, going out geographically, maybe going back in time a little bit more. So I don't have an easy way to kind of do a pretty lengthy hour comp type of training. It's a really good skill set that you're definitely gonna wanna have.
But I think it's a lot of practice. Like I remember when I first got started and I was writing offers for Mark, and he was like, you just gotta look at these comps and figure out what the comps are. You just practice over and over. And what you were saying, Chris, about having a mentor or somebody that you're kind of reaching for works at every level.
Mhm.
Like, when you're just getting started, find the person that's just a little bit ahead of where you are and work with them and, you know,
Gotcha.
ping pong back and forth and practice together.
The only thing, in addition to what you're saying, practice is really important. The only thing, Brandon, I would just say is I will look at comps through typically, if it's not super cookie cutter, and sometimes you just see it like, dude, these condos are all about the freaking same. I can tell you exactly what this condo is going to be.
Yeah.
But if you can't, I tend to look at it through about 3 different lenses. And I'll be like, all right, I want to see everything that has sold, hypothetically, let's say it's a model of home in this zip code for the last 3 years. And I'm going to look at it through that kind of lens. Then I'm going to say, I just want to see it in the last 90 days, but everything that's just, you know, and I'll look at it through that kind of lens. And then I might even have like a third lens that I'm kind of like, look, that's just the elementary school boundary. You know, like I'll kind of look at it like a couple of different ways to try and almost sell myself on different things and see if the data pushes me back to like a specific kind of number. Like if through 3 different lenses, I'm getting 3 different prices, I'm worried. Right now, I definitely need to go to somebody else to help me figure out what the heck's going on here.
Right.
But oftentimes, if you kind of look at it, you kind of develop some different lenses through which you look at it, larger geographic, but shorter periods of time. Longer periods of time, but tighter geographic. You know, you kind of things like that, then you can start seeing a story sometimes. Chris, what would you add at all to comps?
Yeah. So comping, one of the biggest things that I just say is, if you have MLS access, and if you don't, you can just find an agent that you're friends with and ask to be an assistant and jump on. You have to pay the fee, but you get on the MLS and you literally just type in here's the criteria I always do: sold, pending, active under contract. Sold like within 365 days. I know people like a shorter period. I always want a year back, and then. The second function is a map function, and then I go to the map, I type in the address on the map, it'll pinpoint it, and then I look on the map for, if it's a townhouse community, I circle everything that is a townhouse in that little area. If it's a single family, I look for any major roads, and I just block it off like that, and then I just make a circle around it, or a polygram around it, and then go to the results. And then they all show up, and then you look at square footage. That's pretty much it. And you can do this. You can comp anything that is in a neighborhood within 3 to 5 minutes, and have probably within like $15,000 know the number if you use the map function and use it well. Now, if it's outside, if it's in a rural area, it's harder. But here's one of the things that all my buddies that are like the wholesalers and fix and flippers at the highest level, they always say that if it's in a rural area, if it's out further, that it needs to be a screamer of a deal for you to buy it, because that's where everybody gets burnt really bad, because there's not enough data, and you think there is, but you don't realize, okay, well, this one has a X or Y or Z, but if it's in a neighborhood, there's usually enough data where it makes it homogeneous.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then question, for
Yeah.
square footage, do you go like, one of my mentors told me just go like 20% above or below? Does that make sense, how I'm saying it?
I like to keep it pretty tight,
Uh-huh.
but there'll be a couple factors, like, if you got a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 1/2 bath, that's 2,500 square feet, and you got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1/2 bath, that's the same 2,500 square feet. I was like, I lost a full bedroom and a bathroom. I gotta kind of, so I won't rely on any one of those columns.
Right.
Too much. I want to see the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the square footage, the acreage. Dude, I've done so many times where I don't have the acreage listed on there. I'm like, what is going on? Oh, it's thinking it's 4 times the size of the land, right?
Yeah.
So just, I want to see all of it and not overly weight any one thing. So not a bad rule of thumb, but it's probably not the only rule that you want to make sure you're paying attention to.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good. Chris, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Dan.
So, do you listen to Bigger Pockets or read any of their books?
I was like, I want to say like 4 months ago, I was like heavy, and then I got that wholesale deal and I stopped listening, but I'm about to get back into it.
I mean, if you want to invest $10 or $20 in the book Wealth Without Cash.
Wealth Without Cash?
So finance, he goes through how to comp, detailed, step by step how to do it.
Gotcha.
Great book recommendation. Yes.
How much did getting your real estate license, do you think, change your business?
Well, my real estate business massively, but like, I don't know that it's really, there's a lot, the question is like, what do you wanna do? Do you wanna meet with sellers? If you wanna sell properties, and help people buy and sell properties, get your real estate license. If you wanna be an investor, you do not need a real estate license. And frankly, heck, this year, I represented, I think, like 15 real estate agents over the last 12 months because real estate agents don't know how to find properties. It's like, you're either good at finding properties and you don't need a license, or you're good at buying and selling properties, or you're like most real estate agents that are good at neither.
So I'll avoid that.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, do you still wholesale any properties?
Sure, yeah.
When you do that, you just take the wholesale fee, you don't also take a commission?
I mean,
Or have you ever done both?
well, why, like, there's not really a reason to do both. I mean, it's all the same money at some point.
So when you're
No,
wholesaling, you just take.
but if you're gonna wholesale it, I wouldn't, like, I don't really like taking a commission, because like, you either, if you take a commission, then you've got a fiduciary to the seller, and you need to
So they owe
like
you just
represent
exclusive because
them.
of that.
Yeah, so when if I'm gonna do a wholesale or fix and flip, I have to say in there, like, I am an agent and I am buying this for profit. I am not buying this to represent you or represent your interests. Like, I have that whole disclosure in there, and you don't wanna mix and match. That's where you, like, lawsuits and everything
That was
else.
my intuition as well, but I figured I would ask someone who's still doing it. The reason I ask, of course, is because I represent a lot of investors who are doing stuff, and sometimes they ask me to help them with some of this off-market stuff, finding up things that are not on the MLS, and so I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I already have an agency agreement with these folks. But if I'm gonna help source a deal off market, like, do I just ask them to pay my commission, keep it simple? Or is there a wholesaling fee that could be involved, since I'm literally finding them the deal?
Yeah, you can, yeah, but here's the deal, like, we charged a 19% commission last year on a 565 property. Like, do the math on that.
Yeah.
No, sounds good.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate you coming and serving. I'm certainly gonna have you back. I love your insight and your stories. Some of my favorites. Thank you guys for showing up. If you guys can, if you haven't filled in, sign in there and stick around for a little bit. We'll
If anybody wants to reach out to me,
Please.
Instagram at Craddock. I'll respond to anybody that writes me, maybe not within 24 hours, because I do all my own responding on that account.
Instagram CRADROCK.
2 Ds.
CRADDROCK.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, I'm on all the other places.
Your podcast, the on Facebook. What is that?
Uncommon Real Estate.
Uncommon Real Estate as well. Plug for that.
But yeah, if I can give you any resources, whatever, reach out. Like, again, people are so generous with me. I want to be generous with other people. So any way I can help, just let me know.
Perfect. Make sure you RSVP for next month's Grid CAZA Gainesville, and we'll see you guys next month. All right, guys. Thank you.